Should you stay or leave a toxic job? This is part two of a discussion with my Spelman sisters to talk about the decision making process that goes into deciding to leave or stay at a toxic job. Because leaving a job, any job, is not easy. And even if it's a toxic job, there's generally a decision making process. So I wanted to be here with my Spelman sisters to talk about the continuum in terms of different things that we've considered in staying or leaving from a toxic job. We started the conversation part one and then requested to have a part two. So we're having a part two today. And I really wanted to have this before Juneteenth, which is tomorrow, to talk about some of the parallels. There's some scary parallels between toxic jobs and plantation. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about this before Juneteenth. If you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, a toxic job survivor, but more importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. And I'm also the co-host with Marissa Price of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women. You are able to get the replay. We've passed it already. Over 300 Black women participated in the summit. So again, if you want information about how to get prepared to leave a toxic job and to do well, the replay is available. And for Juneteenth, we're offering a 20% discount starting today until Monday, okay? So a 20% discount, you just once you click the link, you put in the discount code LIBERATION for your 20% discount. Okay, so we're ready for part two. So I'm going to have my Spelman sisters introduce themselves, and we're going to get right to our discussion. So DeShaunda, if you could start first, please.
Oh, it's always so hard to unmute. Okay. Thank you. I am DeShaunda Gooden Warner, and it is such a pleasure to be back. I have been geeked about this for the past 2 weeks since we finished last conversation. And really quick, my story is probably not unlike folks that are listening and folks that are on the panel, but I spent many years, decades working in corporate America, and about 9 months ago, made the decision to kind of transition out of that kind of career trajectory and to kind of put a stake in the ground and jump out there on my own. So it's still really fresh and new for me. So I'm excited to kind of learn with and through the other folks on the panel, and just so delighted and just want to say, Dr. Kamani, your work companioned me as I was making that decision, right? Because you started right at the time where it was kind of bubbling in my head, and the affirmation of the work that you are doing, are doing and we're doing, was a really big part of kind of underpinning that decision and making me feel comfortable about making it. And so I thank you.
I so appreciate that. I hear from Black women who contact me, right? But to hear that from a Spelman sister who's also my classmate, it's really special to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Stephanie, I don't know if she can hear us. Okay, let me go to Dr. Monica Cox. If you can introduce yourself, please. You can hear us. Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, Dr. Monica Cox. If you can introduce yourself,
I can.
Please. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. There's some background noise, so Stephanie. Are you on live somewhere else? So let me come back to you, Stephanie, because it was some background noise, okay? So let me come back to you. Okay, Dr. Monica Cox, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Yes, hello, everyone. I am, of course,
introduce yourself, please.
Yes, hello, everyone. And I am excited to be here again. I am a professor who is still in the workplace right now, but I have also started a brand that is trademarked called Stop Playing Diversity. And it is informed from my experience as a professor, where I entered my last administrative position and I asked people not to hire me if they were playing diversity. And over time, I realized that people did not know what that meant. And I went through a lot of turmoil where I began to realize that systems don't always know how to treat Black women leaders. And that kind of began my own entrepreneurial journey with other women The big part about my story is that I have used social media to tell my story. And then, I mean, Dr. Kamani, that's how we met. And I've met so many other people via that way. But I think that it's important to expose organizations, even if you are still working in them. And so part of my story is that I am a tenured professor who is working in the organization that I boldly call out in a very strategic and savvy way. And, I talk about what it looks like to be in that space and to still be liberated as you are in that space. So it's good to be here today. Thank you.
Like
to be in that space and to still be
Stephanie,
liberated
still
as you are in that. So it's good to be here today. Thank you. Be in that space and to still be liberated as you are in that. So it's good to be here today. Thank you.
Just put on mute, Stephanie. Stephanie, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Okay, Sonia. Sonia is also my Spelman classmate. So Sonia, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you so much, as always. It's always a joy to be amongst Spelman women who get it, right? We've lived the experience. We've watched our ancestors and our predecessors before us, other women who have shared carry the heaviness means to go out there and be Black X and then get into these spaces that they want us, are luring us in with sometimes top dollar, and they just completely
Sonia, I'm sorry. Sonia, I'm sorry. It's glitching. So, you know what? The universe does not want some powerful, brilliant Black women to be talking about this topic right now, but that's okay. We're gonna persevere. Okay. So Sonia,
I'm going back to the phone. I'm going back to the phone.
Okay. So I'll come back to you. Okay. And then we'll come back to Stephanie. Stephanie, okay. Are you able to introduce yourself? Stephanie? Can you hear me? I don't know if she can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? It's still in the background.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. But I still hear the echo.
Yeah, I've got a lag. I don't know where it is.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. But I still hear the echo.
Yeah, I've got a lag. I don't know where it is.
Okay. So Stephanie, why don't we do this? Maybe mute yourself and then try to figure out the tech part. And then when you're ready,
I'm going to go back out and
then try to figure out the tech part. And then when you're ready,
I'm going to go back out and
Okay. So we're gonna make this work. Okay. So Sonia, are you on your phone now or are you still on your laptop? I think she's on her laptop. Okay, let's get started. Okay. So DeShaunda and Dr. Monica, if we could talk about experiences that you've had in a toxic job, the red flags that the job was not only stressful, that it was toxic. And the reason I want to ask you this is because Black women ask me all the time, well, how do I know if the job is toxic? I mean, it's stressful, but how do I know it's toxic? All jobs are bad. No jobs are supposed to be fun, right? It's like this whole kind of process. But how do we know when it goes from stressful to actually being toxic? So how can you tell? I'll start with you, DeShaunda.
Yeah, I love this question because I think it was something that I grappled with as well for the exact same reasons that you named, right? When you're sitting at the nexus of a lot of intersectional identities, right? And a lot of the ones that you're holding or stigmatized or marginalized, you're going to feel more than other people feel, right? And that bears out across the data when you look at culture surveys and the like. People of color, people, LGBTQ are always going to show up. It's like, yeah, this is like more toxic or more stressful for me. That's a little bit kind of par for the course. But I think for me, I as I was making that decision, I was looking across two dimensions. So one was the organization itself, right? Like, so what are the possibilities for career progression? Is there something I can still get out of this? Is it the toxicity, is it something that umbrellas over the industry? Is it just my company? Is it just my department? Or is it just the person that I'm reporting into, right? There's these kind of layers. The second thing, and I think the thing that weighed the heaviest on me, because again, I think part of the kind of the training that we get coming out of Spelman is you learn to bloom wherever you're planted, right? Like God sent you here. Come on, girl, you can fix it. And I think Dr. Monica, you spoke to that in your introduction. And that sometimes is your calling, right? When you're in an organization, you are there to make the change. And so that was, I think, for me, was really, really difficult. And so I had to shift from what I would call left brain thinking about it to looking more at that kind of softer, intuitive right side of my brain, and really looking at how does this environment align with my values. And when I started asking those kinds of questions, it was easier to parse out, is this regular work stress stuff because work is just work and it's stressful, or is there a little bit more going on here? And when I looked and I saw, I was like, no, these are some core parts of like my values, my identity that are constantly being slammed against, right? They're constantly being violated. That is when I made kind of the distinction between normal work stress and toxicity, and the way that it showed up for me, kind of organization wise, it got really grindy, right? Like, so it was like the pace in the organization start to get really, really grindy, and everybody goes into like fire ready aim mode, right? It was like, it becomes chaos. And for me personally, chaos is toxic, right? Like I don't do that. And so that, again, for me, it really was not just a left brain decision around the things that you think, salary and progression and potential, but in my bones and in my gut, is this harming me? And when the answer was yes, this is harming me at my gut, at my core, at my soul, now I'm in a toxic situation and I've got to do some different thinking.
Right. So I'm frowning because I could feel what you're saying, but I can remember when I was in that situation where you feel like you're in a situation where it's slimy and you feel like it's breaking your soul and that you're becoming a different person. So it's different for each person, but I heard you say there's chaos involved, right? You talked about looking at the whole toxic system, because many times when we're in a toxic job, it's not just the one or two people, it's the whole system is toxic. And then I also heard you talk about the misalignment of values, right? So people might be saying, oh, we're to support this, and this, but they're gossiping about you all the time, or gossiping about people all the time, throwing people under the bus. So when you recognize, like, wait a minute, this is not what I stand for, and they're going to come for me because the values are just in conflict, right? Okay, thank you so much. What about for you, Sonia? How were you able to distinguish between this job is stressful to this job is actually toxic?
Yeah. I mean, what I so appreciate about just having this conversation is, one, you get the reminders of stay on pace and be focused on where you are in the journey, because the decision is extremely hard. But I think what really and truly forced me to really look at the big picture and consider things was, as an educator, my priority is my students. My priority was making sure that it wasn't just them coming into my classing and being fed my subject and passing my class, but what about the whole child? And when I saw that one just so many times be shattered, and the hope for children being snatched away from them, I really, that system in and of itself took me back to my, growing up and educational experiences. It took me back to teachers who fought for me. And then I had to make a decision. How am I going to be that teacher who fights for them? How am I going to be that voice when going to school board meetings so that my position is not put in jeopardy because I'm speaking out? How am I using my position and leadership skills on campuses wherever I was teaching to then show up in a way where I didn't feel as though I was compromising myself? I wanted to make sure that my voice was loud and proud and bold and controversial and questioning for every little Black girl who was coming up, who was questioning, and her boldness was being questioned. Her, you know, I can remember being 13 and being on a school bus, and it was a public transportation bus, but it was our school bus. And one of my father's parishioners at his church went back and was like, you know, your little girls be on the bus just the cussing and loud and just as, you know, wild as can be. And it reminded me of when I'm in the classroom and I'm not heard. Because even if you're the smartest in the classroom and you constantly raising your hand, but you're overlooked, that's what Black girl magic gets. Sometimes it gets the overlooking, and I have to silence you. So then what do Black girls do? Oftentimes we shake our heads, we do all, you know, this, and we got to get a little loud and bass in our voice in order to be heard. It's the pushback. And the stress part for me was that pushback was causing me physically to get sick. Like I would sometimes after teaching have laryngitis and a cold, and it would be this constant like, why is my throat hurt? Because I was at that meeting and I'm screaming for these babies, and I remember being a baby and have to be screamed to be seen and heard and validated. And that to me was that it was the correlation of those two things. When they met, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So very interesting, Sonia. So you talked about the silencing, the pushback, and a result of that, experiencing the physical and the psychological symptoms. And when you talked about the silencing, remembering what it was like to be as a child, as a Black girl, being silenced. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm having a parallel experience as a whole grown woman.
Right.
And I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Right. There's other places where I can elevate my voice and to be heard. So thank you, Sonia. What about for you, Dr. Monica?
Excuse me. You know what? I wrote down two things, and it comes back to me for like the infrastructure and policy. So I have a background in higher education, and I realized that if an organization cannot follow its own policies, or if it cannot tell me what their policies are, that's how you know that something is toxic. I would say that, you know, I am in a male-dominated field. I am in engineering, and as many of us have had to be, I was a first. So I often tell people, whenever you are a first, you have to revise the policies, reevaluate policies, look at how things are done, because that was a different system. And when an organization does not shift its policies, and it's a fight to try to figure out how to do that, I feel like that's an example of toxicity as well. And I think that like with my Stop Playing Diversity message, I really am focused on equity. I am very literal. So in an organization, I want to know that you do what you say you do. You are who you say you are. And an organization has different faces depending on who you are. If they value people differently, if they pay people differently, if they listen to certain people's stories and not other people's stories, then that tells me that that space is toxic, because they're not doing what's necessary to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to succeed. So I'm gonna be honest with you. From what I have learned and what I see, almost every organization is like this. Like, it's one of these things of like, where do you work? Because this really is the structure of any workplace in America. How it was established, and Black women were at the bottom. They did not see us being CEOs. They did not see us being department chairs and provosts and presidents and all those things. So we are constantly having to engage with them, looking at the infrastructure and policy. So I would say it is that catch-22. If you want to work in an organization, have they done the work to include you in the organization? Or are you going to have to fight them to show them that you belong in that place too? So that's my summary.
Yes. So they may say that you belong, but do the policies really support that? Number one. And like you said, do they even know the policy? Do they even have policy? You also talked about, you know, our job environments are a microcosm of society. So in terms of racism, sexism, all the intersectionality, and there's a social hierarchy within the workplace. So certain people's voice, certain people's experiences certain people's comfort level are centered over others. So as Black women, we may have been told something like, you make people feel uncomfortable, or people are intimidated by you, or the whole pet to threat thing. I think a lot of us have had all these different experiences, as you're right. It's a reflection of society. And so being aware of that as we walk into these work environments. So thank you, Dr. Monica.
Can I say one quick thing
Yeah,
about that too? And I think what you're going to see, I mean, I think maybe I mentioned this last time, but with it being a political year, you know, you're going to see a lot more of that now. And even last summer, when you saw, like I said, the Roe v. Wade decision, when you're seeing race-based admissions, we now have our government saying that our voices do not matter. So we're having to see it in a very different way. So look at it, it's like a systems within systems within systems within systems issue. And that's why your work is so important. What we're talking about is so important, because if you live in this country, your very government is saying that you don't belong. And that's business. Look at the Fearless Fund. Your entrepreneurs, you're just putting money in your own business, but now you have federal judges who are saying you cannot do this. So come on. I'm just saying, like, we think we're free. And tell me if I'm off, Dr. Kamani, and everyone else, if I'm like bursting a bubble here. But we say we're free in our businesses. We say we're free in our independence. But y'all, when the government tells you you can't give your money to who you want to give your money to, we need to question that too. So I'm just putting it out there. Where's
well, you know, you're not wrong. You know, you speaking truth. We know that, right? You know, you speaking truth. But the thing about it, and again, the timing of talking about Juneteenth is symbolic, because we work so hard as Black women, as Spelman women. We work so hard, and we're told this certain thing. You're a Spelman woman, and so we come out of Spelman with a certain degree of confidence. Thank God. A certain degree of knowing our worth, but then we run into these systems that are constantly telling us that we're less than. Now, we're not saying don't work in systems. What we're saying is be aware of what you're contending with. And if there's certain systems that are worse than others, that are more toxic, they're harming you, think about pivoting out and find somewhere else to go. Okay. So Stephanie, are you able to join us? Okay. So if you can introduce yourself, and then Stephanie, if you can talk about how were you able to determine your job was way more than just stressful? It was actually toxic.
Okay. So my name is Stephanie Mitchell Hughes. I am an attorney. I graduated from Spelman in the class of 1984. And I currently serve as the assistant director of NAMI Franklin County. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Just in listening to what everyone has said, I'll just start with how I knew my job was toxic. For me, and I think specifically about the most recent, not the job that I currently have, but the one before that I spent 14 and a half years in. I knew that job was toxic because of the impact on my physical health and just my own, the level of stress that I was carrying, and also the behavior that was displayed there, not all of which was directed at me. There was another Black woman who also endured some of the same kinds of things that I dealt with. But I also can remember a specific event that occurred in the workplace. And I won't relay what the event was, but needless to say, well, I'll just say what happened, if you'd like. So there was a white man, one of my colleagues who I have known and knew for a long time, who worked in the same space. And he got very frustrated with the person who at the time was the executive director of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that he hit a breaking point. And the breaking point basically was he got up in the middle of the work. I mean, because, the work being done.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a continuous, because of the nature of the work, it was a continuous, ongoing, like, okay, we can't stop this lever. And so he got up and basically cursed out the one person who was in leadership, cursed out the executive director, walked out the door, left his badge at the security desk and left. And
Wow.
quit right there.
Wow.
Now, he could do that. He had the luxury of being able to do that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he regretted it for a moment. But in conversations that were had, the individuals who ran the office looked at what he did as a one-off. This was just him being him.
Mm.
But as a person who spent a number of years doing labor and employment law, it was like you missed a moment, because it was, to me, it was evidence and very symbolic of wider problems and wider issues that were happening within the workplace that just simply were being ignored and not discussed.
Yeah.
And, I was listening to these about systems.
Mm-hmm.
These systems have been functioning in this way forever.
Yeah.
And because they have functioned forever, and they are steeped largely in patriarchy, when women were not working widely outside of the home, when women, especially Black women, did not hold the types of positions that we hold now.
Mm-hmm.
We were not a part of those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so people can have, you have these systems that everyone is attempting to survive in and navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about the wider system at play beyond just the space where I worked,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it was just deeply and firmly entrenched straight across the board. But it was something that just was never, people who could have changed it were not necessarily willing to do that,
Mm-hmm.
because they did not care, and they did not respect the people who were actually there on the ground doing the work for them.
True.
And they did not believe in their worth or their value.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's no real mistake, if we think about it, that a large majority of these people were Black and are Black.
Mm.
But then the most unfortunate part is that because many of these people spent their entire career within this same system, it almost became where they basically would eat each other. They were not above eating each other alive and cutting each other's throat, because it was like, well, I have learned that in order to survive this system, I'm going to cut you down, regardless of whether you pose a threat to me or not. But that is just because this is the system in which we are living, and in which I need to survive and I need to stay in order to earn a living and take care of myself and my family.
Yeah. So we're talking about the toxic system. And also when we see something happening to a coworker, or how a coworker might be pushed to an edge, that again is a reflective of the toxic system. And when you talk about, I always think about like the water is dirty, right? It's just a dirty water situation, and people are trying to but they will step on you and they will drown you because they are trying to elevate themselves. So those are all examples of what a toxic environment might be. Now, it might look a little different in your work environment, but these are some examples. So ladies, as I said, we want to have this conversation before Juneteenth, right? So, because I talk a lot that toxic jobs are like plantations. So in what ways do you think, or have you seen that toxic jobs parallel plantations? And anyone can answer this question.
Yeah, I this was fascinating when you brought it up, because it was not a metaphor that it like kind of come together in my mind, but it is so very apt. And what it puts me in the mind of, and I don't know if anybody else would have recalled this, and maybe anyway, Dave Chappelle used to have on Chappelle's show used to have this running sketch called "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong." And it was like every time they would do it, it was like the person is like toxic, like exactly what we're talking about. They're pushed to the brink, and then they go off in the boardroom, like the story that you were just telling, Stephanie. And the fear is, right, for everybody else is witnessing, is don't say the thing, don't get loud, don't speak your mind, right? That's the message. And it's that aspect, it's the terror aspect that really bubbles up for me, and it keeps you reinscribing the system because you're afraid I can't survive outside of the system. And that's exactly what slavery is. It's like, no, like if you keep it real, this is not going to land the way that you want it. And I'll just use like a really quick story, something that happened to me really early in my career. It was like in my mid-20s, and I was working for a company that created educational products, because I had come out of the classroom. I was a classroom teacher. And it was a god awful, like I would be in tears on the way to work. Like there's no doubt in my mind that this was a toxic work environment. And I remember the woman that was training us cussed out another coworker at like F-bombs, like top of her lungs.
Wait, DeShaunda, wait, DeShaunda.
I hand to God.
This is an educational.
No, this is a company that made educational.
Right.
Educational catalog company, and I don't call them, I'm naming names. I'm like Cat Williams, Lakeshore Learning Materials, if anybody wants to know. That was the company that it was at the time. And one coworker and another coworker got into it. The one woman cussed the other woman out, F-bombs, top of her lung, in the middle of the company, like just loud. Wow. The woman who got cussed out got fired. I'm confused in ways I've never experienced before in my life. So for a week, I kept waiting for the woman who did the cussing to also get fired. And after a week, I couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, I don't understand. Somebody really needs to explain to me how this is going to work. And of course, 3 days later, guess who got fired? And so,
how dare you question
and if I let the story in there, right, it would have been one of those when keeping it real goes wrong. And that's what people want you to think, is that if you keep it real, you're going to end up getting fired. But spirit will take that other people are trying to do and harm you for, and use it for your good. And so within 2 months, I was in a new role. I was making more money. That job taught me skills I'm still using today. They paid for my MBA. Like it became like a whole thing. And but it's the terror of, if I don't comply with the system, my finances are going to be ruined. I can't pay my house note. I can't pay my car note. I can't take care of my kids. I can't send my kids to college. You really start to believe that that's true. And it's not, right? And it just is not. And so that sense of really wanting to disempower you with terror tactics, and making you lean into those misconceptions so that you can be controlled is insidious, right? And that really is what that put me in the mind of.
It's insidious, and it really taps into your core fears of survival, that you won't be able to survive without this job. You need to have money, as if that job is the only place where you can make money, right? But again, they get in your head, and that terror. So true. So true. Dr. Monica, did you come up? Okay.
I do. I have something to say. You know what? I think one of the things that is my aha is that we often think that if we work really hard, we're going to own the plantation.
Ooh!
That plantation does not belong
to us.
You will never own the master's plantation. They will
never.
And even there is someone in line to get it. and it's not you. And I think so often we stay quiet and we just, we're like, yes, so we're going to do what we need to do. And I'm going to throw this person under the bus. I'm going to, slaughter someone with these policies that are unjust because my turn is next. I'm going to be the heir to the throne. But we will never be the heir to the throne. And I think, I talk about being transactional because people are like, how can you stay in this organization? Baby, I don't want to own the organization. I learn what I can from the organization, get the resources from the organization, set my infrastructure. But baby, my goal is not to own the organization, because you know what? You will always be afraid if you think that your speaking up is going to remove an opportunity from you. One thing that I always say is that I know in my organization, they can come and punish me, but I have a background in policy. I have a background in a lot of things. I'm a researcher and I'm a scholar. And sweetie, I understand what you wrote, and I understand that's supposed to belong to me as well. So it's knowing your rights in the organization, not having that desire to sell out because you think that it belongs to you, and being very strategic to say, I understand everything that you have built, but I'm going to use this infrastructure to build myself, to share with other people the secrets of the organization so they can build what they need to build. And if I absolutely need to tear you down, I know how to do it from the inside out. So it's all understanding. I'm on the plantation, but it is not my source. And if I have to be here, I'm going to learn every single thing that I need to and write the maps and the blueprints so that everybody knows that if we ever get to the day where we need to burn this place down, we can, and move on and build our own stuff. So that's all.
Oh, mic drop. Wait, okay.
Right.
So, okay. You said we will never own the plantation. Let us remember that we will never own the plantation. Why are we killing ourselves for these jobs that don't care anything about us? And I got to bring this up. How many of us have been in situations where another Black person has thrown us underneath the bus, thinking that if they throw us underneath the bus, that they'll get hired? They won't. It's going to come back around to you, okay? So selling yourself out, selling your soul, it's not going to work. And retaliation, that's another thing that is a parallel to a plantation. So speaking our truth, speaking out, it's that fear. Oh my God, who's going to find out? If they find out, then what's going to happen? Oh my God. And in this one, I can't leave, right? That whole thing, like you can't run away from the plantation. So what about you, Stephanie and Sonia, about parallels between a toxic job and a plantation?
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
You know what, Monica, what you said, today I was talking to my daughter about, one of the things that I found most remarkable from the riots that happened right after George Floyd was murdered. And I remember the night that they set the precinct on fire. And because I used to represent police, and I could just hear them in my head of what they were saying. But what you said just reminded me of, there was a 30 for 30 that came on a few weeks ago, and I just keep thinking about the title of the 30 for 30 that said, I'm just here for the riot. And so it's like, I'm just here to burn this place down. And I don't mean literally we're going to burn it down, because when I saw the precinct being burnt to the ground on the news and what have you, it's not as if we're here to start a riot, but what we have to learn to do and figure out how we are going to burn these systems that are killing us, that are sucking all of everything that we are, that we turn ourselves over to, that we sell ourselves out for, that we cut other people's throat for. It becomes almost like a Lord of the Flies type of environment. And it's like we have to figure out ways that we're going to burn them down. But at the same time, we've got to have spaces that we can build that will include us, let us use our voices, and And I don't know whether or not we could even allow those spaces would even exist or even be allowed to exist, as I even say that. So
well, we have to create them ourselves, right? Because they're not going to allow us to first of all, they're going to fight us with everything they can if we're trying to dismantle the system, because that's how they survive and that's how they, right? But it's also knowing that we have to create our own systems where we elevate and work together and not tear each other down, because it doesn't benefit anyone. So we have to recognize the tools of oppression, which are divide and conquer, grind, all those. We have to recognize it and not replicate it in our own systems.
But the one thing I do want to add, and this is in relationship to the Fearless Fund, and this is the way I think that this speaks to the way that we have to think about things. So the guy who sued the Fearless Fund, what he essentially has done with the Fearless Fund case and other cases is he has taken federal statutes that were established in the late 1800s in response to slavery, and he is using those statutes, the same statutes that you have the NAACP and all those other people, they use to attack discrimination. He's turned around and used he is using those things, using all that line of cases, all of those things, that whole like jurisprudence that was built to attack the systems that we are trying to create.
Right.
And so that is one thing people have said, well, how can they sue us and sue the people with for Fearless Fund? Well, Section 1981 is a statute that enables people to challenge private individuals for something that they are doing that has a discriminatory, disparate impact. So that's just another way of, if we try to go out, because Fearless Fund is an example of that.
Right.
You try to create your own system.
Yeah.
So, it begs the question, well, if these systems are eating us alive, and if we're going to be attacked if we try to go out and build other systems, then what do we do?
Right.
And I think having brilliant attorneys like you, being able to recognize the law and look at what are our options as we strategize, right? So it can feel like the oppressor is using things against us, but we have to outmaneuver them just like we did when we were enslaved. We just had to outmaneuver them, which is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of collaboration together, right? Sonia, what about you? What parallels do you see between a toxic job and a plantation?
Well, I like to take it back to a historical perspective, in the sense of, we're celebrating Juneteenth, and the reality that a whole host of slaves in the state of Texas weren't notified, and it took 2.5 years for that notification to take place, as if, even though during that time period word traveled by horse and by word of mouth, just like horses could have been sent to one state, if they should have been sent to another state. It shouldn't have taken 2.5 years, right? The signing of the freeing of the slaves, the emancipation, was in January of 1863, but the last slaves in Galveston, Texas weren't notified until June 19th, 1865. So I like to have people just marinate on that. It is a part of those systems that are so deeply embedded in who we are as a society, so much so that when slaves were even freed, the question for a lot of them was, what do we do now? Now, you had some who was like, I'm out of here. I know I can go do this on my own. I have a skill, I have a trade, and I can go and make money off of doing what a blacksmith, a maid, there were certain professions where they knew I can go and make money off of this.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a fraction of Black men in particular in certain states who were like, I'm going to assert my voice and become very political, a part of the political process, so they can't. So again, where that pushback comes and how your life is going to be put in jeopardy. Now let's flip it ahead to current situations where we had the Black Lives Matter movement. I was one of the leaders here in California, statewide, when it came to George Floyd, when it came to, even prior to that, Trayvon Martin, Oscar Grant, and in my hometown where I currently reside of Sacramento, it was the Stephon Clark case.
Mm-hmm.
And so myself and other activists, and when I look at our chapter alone, I would say that easily 68 to 71% of our chapter had college degrees. 24%, and we did the numbers at one point because the pushback was always, you got a bunch of angry, uneducated, welfare women who are fighting these fights. Why do y'all trust them, and why are y'all listening to them?
What? Why do I trust them? Like a degree makes you more human or
that part.
trustworthy.
Absolutely, that part, because typically the people who are the most victimized and who are most marginalized maybe don't have those degrees, but you got women who are our chapter was 95% women, right? And so when we got that pushback, we got with other chapters, and we wrote a bill for the state of California that now police have to two bills that passed, our state assemblies, in policing the police. And I say all of that to say, as I do and have been out of the quote unquote system, that had prevented me from moving and shaking the way I wanted to in the classroom and in educational spaces, I am seeing a whole host of, and this is to Monica's point in her earlier comment, I am seeing organizations, and this is post George Floyd, who are saying, we want to do this, and we're going to bring folks in, and we are the most diverse that we've ever been, and we're cognizant about who we hire and what positions that they hold. But now, because the government has been so, it has always been whitewashed, but it has been so obliterated by the fractions of the Trump aspect. And I don't want to get into it from a political aspect of, Republican versus Democrats, because we know that both have detrimental policies and ways that they go about their business that harm Black folks and Black women in particular. I had a dream not too long ago that, and I kick myself because it reminds me of when Barack was president, and I said, if they assassinate this man, I am going to feel so guilty for voting for him, because we know what the system does to us. It kills us. And so I had a dream not too long ago that Biden died and Kamala became president, and in my mind it's like, they're going to kill her. But the system, the way that it's designed, is killing us anyway. And so even though I do equity work, and I was looking at, we have stood on for almost 15 years now that we are not your typical DEI company, because we know that playing diversity, again, to Dr. Monica's, playing diversity and what it is, it still kills us. And so while all these organizations, nonprofits, for-profits, whatever industry you're in, are working diligently to say that you are equitable in what you do and how you look on surface, there's been a lot of pushback, because those people who are under the fire are not the first to go if they don't look like us. And so they can look good on paper. You can pull up their websites and you see a whole host of things that make you feel good. Like, it gives you the warm and fuzzies. But I'm telling you, as I do equity work, I say two things to leaders of organizations. If you figure out the race thing and the equity thing in your organization, you'll figure out the other things in your organization, right? We can have intelligent, courageous conversations about pride and about Juneteenth in the same month. and neither of them be marginalized. Like, I'm a Black heterosexual woman walking around with a rainbow hair design on purpose because I got a child and a grandchild who are part of that community, and they gonna get my support hands down all day, every day. And even if I didn't, I would still be that, weird person in the back of the room with the hands raised. What about such and such? And why are we not bringing this in? And whose voices are we elevating? Because when we don't elevate and lift the voices of those who are the victims of these systems, we are missing the point.
Yes, yes. So wow, that was a sermon. Okay. So in terms of when we look at these systems, the way they're designed and all the performative DEI gestures you talked about, and Monica talks about this a lot with Stop Playing Diversity, but in essence, the core element of how they mirror plantations is that they can kill us. So they can kill us physically, mentally, and spiritually, right? So breaking our spirits when we are in these situations. Now I'm going to pivot because I want to hear, because in our part one, I think everyone except for Dr. Monica, because she's still in the environment, we talked about our reasons for leaving the toxic job, right? So I want to hear from Dr. Monica, and I want other Black women to hear your experience, because I would think maybe the vast majority of Black women watching me are still at a toxic job, okay? So can you share with them about what has gone into your decision-making of staying at a toxic job?
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny because the system that I'm in is a little bit different, because I told you all earlier that I'm very vocal. This is who I am in my job, outside my job, all the time. And in higher education, at least as of now, even though they're trying to take this down, there's the tenure process. And I began that process years ago. And I used to always say, like, oh, I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to be quiet until I get tenure, and then until I'm a full professor. But I had this aha moment, even as I got tenure. And I said, you know what? I am not operating in the full benefits of what tenure means in an institution. Tenure is supposed to be a permanent job. There is nowhere where you go where it's like, you know what, you do this 5-year period and I'm going to give you a job for life. So I thought, hold it. If I have 6 figures by the age of whatever, 30 something, and if this is a permanent job, then you telling me until I retire, you're going to give me 6 figures? If I show up, do my service, do my teaching, do my stuff, and you're going to deposit that money into my bank because I did what I needed to for 5 years? Okay, hold up. Let me figure this out. And so over time, I mean, I got a presidential award. I did the things in the system that got me to stay in the system. But at some point, I became disruptive in that system. I knew that I was the first in many ways. I knew I was supposed to stay silent because that's what was expected. But they let me in the system. And when I saw what happened, and I saw this is how people get into this space, this is how people are fired from this space, this is how we make decisions, this is how we make policies, this is how we give funding to the students who look like me. Oh, I'm in the room now. Let me tell y'all something. And so it reminds me of being like a federal judge or being a Supreme Court justice in a weird way, and that there are fewer than 0.3% of Black women who get to the place where I am. Wow. So in my institution, which I will not name because I don't want to, but I will tell you, I am a distinguished professor of engineering, meaning it was approved by the board of trustees for that organization, meaning it is at the highest level of the organization. So there are so few people who are in that space. But when I tell you the power, not from an ego perspective, but understanding the belly, the inner workings, going into the inner court of this organization where people have not been allowed who looked like me. But I'm like, you know what? I know that secret. Oh, because I sit here, I know that secret too. I know that secret. I know this secret. And so it's secret upon secret upon secret upon inner room stuff that no one has access. But you know what you know what I do when I'm in that room? I say, you know what? Let me write it down. Now I know. I know how this works. I'm going to write books and I'm going to tell you, this is what's happening on the inside. This is what you do when this happens. This is how you flip the system, because you know what let me tell you, see, y'all get me started. I'm going to hush in a minute. But you know what I realized, and I told people this, what did I learn from being in the system? Rules are not real. Rules can be changed for anyone if you know how to change the rules. That's what I know.
You said so rules are not real.
They're not real. They're not real. We so used to rule, the system. Guess what? They're not real. And there are policies that can be created to accommodate anyone. And when you sit in there and you say, you know what? I can hear what you say, but that's not even real. And there's rule 4.3.5 that can be torn down to show that that's not real, so that somebody else can get access to that fake stuff that you're trying to give people. That's when you begin to dismantle bit by bit. Because you know what? It's also understanding that rules aren't real, but it's telling people, sis, that rule isn't real. Oh, they told me I can't get money. It's not real. Go this way. This is the path.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're in the inside. So you have inside access that most people don't have. You're taking notes about what's happening, right?
Absolutely.
You're calling people out, and then you're using that to help liberate people who may not know the inside.
I am. And my thing is, I thought about it. People would want to be like, Monica, we don't want you in the system. But guess what? Because of the rules that you created in a thing called tenure, and because I do my work, and because I produce, you're not going to get me out.
At that.
Absolutely. You're what you want to do? I know I make you uncomfortable. What you gonna do? And so it's almost a very different mindset of like, Black women are supposed to operate this way in the system. But guess what? I am going to speak up. I am going to push back. I am going to tell you that you're wrong. I am going to call out the grievances. I am going to use the very equity system that you said you are supposed to have in place. I will use it to get the evidence that what you did was wrong. And then what are you going to do? So it's knowing that you have on a cape and you're not afraid to say, you know what? I'm going to show you what's up. Now that I'm here, I'm going to call your bluff and do this. And in summary, based on all the things I've said, I believe that my calling in life, I have the grace to do this, but it is almost getting back to the plantation, being the Harriet Tubman person, to almost say, you know what? I'm going to lead you to freedom, because this system will mess you up and have you thinking that you are less than, but because of this, that's wrong. Because of that's wrong. Because of whatever, you're actually very free. And when you now get in the system, I want you to open your mouth, because that freedom is within you to free more people. So it's a domino effect to just change how these places want us to think about ourselves in spots that we have earned. Now, understand, and I'm going to say this really quickly. I didn't say I wanted to own the system. It's also the mindset. I understand. I could be kicked out some way, somehow, and I'm going to be okay if I am. But as long as I'm in this system, I know my role. I know my duty. I know my assignment, and I'm going to do it without fear.
Okay. So let me ask you this.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Monica. Okay. So with all of that, because that's powerful, right? Being in that position is very powerful, right?
Right.
Having that cape, does the cape get heavy in terms of the impact it has on you? Because you're in the middle of the fire, you're seeing the fire, right? But is there also a toll, and is there also some element of, I have a role to play, so I'm going to stay? And at what point does it? And I don't know. Does it impact you? Yes.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to tell you, it's like whenever you build something, it was very hard at first. I understood. It was like being in the wilderness, and there were a lot of things that had to be torn down, a lot of navigation, a lot of paths that had to be created, but I was building the army. And now that I'm in a place where many people have an awareness of their roles and their rights, it's not me by myself. But I knew that in that first season, I was supposed to navigate, you know, kind of being the one to be like, what's the path? And now I'm beginning to see the momentum of people who are saying, you know what, this is how I'm going to redefine how this looks. I'm going to be authentic as a professor. I'm going to show myself at the beach in my swimsuit. I'm going to call out my organization in a protest at USC. I'm going to do the things because this is my right. And I think when it's almost like being a general, if I could use that metaphor, I feel like many times I've moved to a general perspective. I used to be, you know, right there on the front lines. I did. And it was hard, but I believe that I had the grace. And that has allowed me to be in a very different place and have a very different platform to do this work. Where I now have other people who are bold in these spaces and go in and just don't sit there and get the titles, but they are saying, I'm going to do something. I'm going to share the secrets. That's something I wanted to say earlier. They, you know what? They understand the assignments better.
Okay. So that's the part, because I was concerned that that's a heavy burden, right?
It was, yeah.
But I didn't want you to be out there by yourself. But you're saying that you have other people who are out there fighting with you, right?
Absolutely.
So it lessens the burden, but there's still a cost.
Always. And you know what? I have so many women who are in academia who have literally sent me like direct messages, and people who say, I pray for you. You know, I am lifting your arms. I see what you do, and I understand that you have this voice to do it, but you are transforming this. And I think it's almost like having a prophetic mantle. This is my calling. This is, I mean, God has given me the voice to do this. I have the vision to do it, but I am not alone. And I begin to see that I am not alone. And I speak what I am called to speak. Every day. It comes to me in the night. It comes to me in the morning. And I do not have the fear of saying this because it comes out so freely. So it's different. I know that I'm called. That's why I tell people, everyone, don't act like this. Don't do this. This is not the norm for everyone. But who I was created to be in this season for this world in this time is this one with the mouth, with the ability to speak like this, with the ability to write the words. That is what I have been given.
Yes. And I heard you say for a season, right? So
absolutely.
Many of us may be in situations where we do things for a season, but we're also able to pass the baton, right?
It's a mantle.
Yeah.
The mantle will be passed.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stephanie, were you trying to say something, Stephanie and Sonia?
Yeah.
Okay. What are we going to say?
Well, what I was going to say is, I mean, I think, and I can see that calling in you, Dr. Monica. I see that calling in you, and I see and just identify so much with what you are saying. And you know, of course, that there are the Bledsoes, even within your own organization, the Dr. Bledsoes, who are swimming around out there because essentially, and in many respects, I don't even know if we've even ever left the plantation. I don't know that we ever have. If we sit back and we think, if I think about the whole arc and the whole way in which Black people have sometimes behaved with each other, because it's like, well, if I do X, Y, and Z, then I am going to get and be rewarded in this way. And so I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, Dr. Monica. I do. And just make sure that in that work, in doing that work, you take care of yourself. But one of the things that I really also wanted to say, and this is to women in particular, Black women in particular, who find themselves in these spaces.
Mhm.
I struggled for a very long time with whether I should leave. I had doctors who told me that I needed to leave my job because it had such a detrimental impact on my health.
Mhm.
And like many people, I just did not feel that I could leave because I am it for my children. I have this, I have that. No responsible person just up and leaves a job without having another one. And so I just want to encourage people to hear what we are saying and hear the stories that are being told and the work that is being done, because it is real. It is what Dr. Monica's talking about, what she is doing is real.
Mhm.
And there are people who are going to carry that ball for you and they're going to help you.
Mhm.
But make certain that you plan accordingly before, if you decide that you need to leave, plan your exit. If a doctor is telling you to leave, plan your exit. It can be done.
Mhm.
And it may not necessarily look exactly the way that you want it to, and all the boxes may not line up exactly the way that you think it should be,
Mhm.
but that does not necessarily mean that you should stay.
Yeah. So I just want to just first, I think you mentioned Dr. Bledsoe in the first panel we did about Invisible Man. So Dr. Bledsoe, if I'm not correct, was a Black man who was not supportive of other Black people, right? Is
Right.
that correct?
He was the president. He was the president of the university that
Yeah.
Invisible Man attended.
Mm.
And he would have been that person who, okay, I have this position. I want to keep my position. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to cut anybody down that I may perceive as a threat. And I'm going to cut other people's throats, other Black people's throats. And unfortunately, given the time frame in which we have lived as Black people, there are a lot of Dr. Bledsoes out there.
Yeah, there are.
I'm thinking about, like, even in and I don't know if Malcolm X ever actually said some of the things that Denzel Washington said when he played him in that movie, but I'm thinking about the specific part where he's talking about, if we say, let's go here, let's have our own, let's do this, let's edify, let's build ourselves, there's someone else in the background saying, oh, you can't do that. Or they'll go back and they'll tell somebody else again off, someplace else in the big house on the plantation. Go and tell them, so that way people will know what's going on. And unfortunately, we will continue to have these people, and you have got to be careful out there. Because it can be treacherous.
Right. So all kinfolk, right? And Stephanie, what I heard you say is that you hear what Dr. Monica was saying and the importance of listening to all of our stories, and also recognize, if you choose to stay at a job, a particular toxic job, recognize when it might be taking a toll on you, and that if it is taking a significant toll on you, get your exit plan ready and get ready to go, but also watch your back for everybody, including people who might look like us, right? Just that painful understanding. What about Sonia? You were going to say something as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback a little bit and say that we should have hope. While it is scary to be in the fields, opening up your mouth, being the voice of reason, and sometimes the voice of discomfort, that challenge, I think that sometimes people are afraid of what they don't know, that the power that they have. Like when you feel that let's say, Dr. Monica, when you wrote that first piece of change policy or that rule that didn't exist, that we made it work for after I have tenure, and you can no longer do this to X, Y, and Z, right? And you felt the sense of accomplishment, right? Stephanie, leaving, watching, knowing that you had previously worked with officers, and then seeing a precinct burn down, right? DeShaunda, when you're in that position and you say, okay, this is not serving me, when we have that power and we know that we can, it gives us the courage to continue to do. So I wanted to first say that there are tons of us out there who are just waiting for, it's like double dutch. We waiting for that chance to jump in. And once you get your rhythm, it's like, it's no stopping what the potential and possibilities can be.
Right.
But where I see the hope really and truly is going into organizations, and I'm seeing our younger generations come behind us. They are using language that we did not have. And I am extremely proud to be called to the carpet when you give me something as a task, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I never thought of it from that perspective. Thank you. I'm adding that to my wheelhouse. So when I go into the next organization and I see another young person who maybe doesn't have the courage to articulate with this other young person, I'm like, okay, so we have to be willing to not just let our age, our experience, and where we've come from, our education, all of those things shape how we move in the world, because there are some folks who can teach us some things, and we have to be open to that. And that's what I'm seeing. I am saying, as I evaluate and begin to predict where things will be 5-10 years from now, I'm saying in 10 years from now, some of these conversations are going to be different at the boardroom level. They're going to be forced at a micro and a macro level to just present things differently, because they're going to be people, more than one person on the inside, like Dr. Monica. They're going to be, they're going to get their notes together, and it's going to be like Wonder Twin Powers. And then it's, things multiply. We don't die, we multiply. I'm from the hood, so, all those little sayings we used to say when we was kids. But yeah, I feel hopeful that more women, more Black women in particular, will courageously be like, not on my watch. Because what we also have seen, and we still see it even to this day, I see and I talk to leaders who are Black leaders of organizations, and because they're trying to protect their own back, they perpetuate the very systems that are killing the multitudes of us, under the guise of protecting their own back, under the guise of, let me stay in position and I'm going to come get you and bring you through the back door. Yeah, you might have to be fired through the front door. Yeah, you might be in front of that firing squad on the front end, but I got you. And half the time they don't realize that they don't have the power that they think they have. And so they're perpetuating those systems. The dismantling is just like Dr. Monica is saying. It's just like the young folks that I'm seeing. And when I say young folk, all of us here, from 40 to 60, and I'm proud to be in that window. But I'm saying young folks in their 20s and 30s are like going into spaces, and they're saying, we don't have to do that. I was talking to my cousin, who's a couple of years older than me, yesterday. She said, I'm calling in for Juneteenth because they haven't given it to us off. I said, girl, call in for Juneteenth, call in for Malcolm X's birthday, call in, look up whoever your heroes are. For me, it's Fannie Lou Hay. I used to call off and be, they gave us as teachers 10 sick days and X amount, you got your vacation as the summertime, but you had these days that you can bank. I'm banking my days, but I'm calling off for my heroes because they couldn't. All those people I looked up to who had a voice that stood out in the crowd.
Sonia,
go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah. Sonia, I have to say something about what you said, because when you talked about sometimes there's Black people who might say to themselves and say to other people, I'm going to help you out, but just hold on. I need to play these games, whatever. sometimes they get corrupted by the system in the process.
Mhm.
And I don't know if they recognize it, but they do. And they start becoming the oppressor as well. Stephanie, I saw you came off mute as well.
No, so this conversation is reminding me. Okay, so today I heard a podcast that was hosted by Tiffany Cross. And one of our younger Spelman sisters was one of the guests. So it's called Across Generations with Tiffany Cross. Younger person, older person. So she had Hosea Williams' daughter on. And then the person's last name from Spelman is Wright. And she was SGA president. And I want to say that she graduated in 2021 or something like that. Anyway, there is a t-shirt that Tiffany referenced because they were talking about activism that younger people are wearing saying, "We are not our ancestors." And we are not our ancestors. And Tiffany pointed out to her that she felt that was very, very disrespectful because of the sacrifices and the fact that you don't have that lived experience, because everybody in each generation has had to do something, has had to make some sort of sacrifice, and that sacrifice has moved the ball ahead. So by the time the ball got to you, you could do X, Y, and Z. But that's one thing. But the other thing I want to also mention is this conversation also reminds me of two things that I think we should listen to. So Tremaine Lee did Counting Millions about reparations and about a Black family that was able at the end of the Civil War to actually receive reparations and what that did for their family generations ahead. So that's the other one thing. But then the other thing is that on Reveal, another investigative journalism show, they are doing a series called 40 Acres and a Mule. Is that a lie, basically? And one of the conversations that they had, and I had to stop listening to it because it just made me, I thought my head was going to pop off because it made me so mad. And so they were interviewing descendants of slave owners because they were talking about how there were some individuals who had been enslaved, who had been given land, but when the slave or former slave owner complained about that them being given that land, the land was given back to them.
Oh my gosh.
And so, and there's some more intricate details that they talk about, but one of the things that the reporter asked the white descendant is whether or not the former Black people should be given something for having worked the land that had improvements and the attitude, all these things that were done so that they could have the land that they had by the slaves that they owned. And his response was, well, no, we can't just give things away. We can't just, that's the problem in this world. We're just giving things away to people. And it's like, well, no, we're not giving you Black people anything. We earned that because we were slaves and we were brought to this country against our will. You said X, we would get 40 acres and a mule. So because someone in a position of perceived power, squealed about it and complained, they were given that back. So that's how the whole thing that makes people feel that they can even say that out of their mouths and make the argument that Black people are not entitled to anything. That entire attitude, that entire thinking and way of perceiving is a current that continues to run through spaces like these toxic work environments and gives people, and unfortunately, whether they be white and sometimes whether they are Black, the attitude that, well, they're not really entitled to be here in the first place. They're only here because of X, Y, and Z. They did not earn X, Y, and Z. They should just be glad to be here. So therefore, we can just treat them and react in any way that we want to.
Right. Which is bogus, right? If you look at the whole hypocrisy of them coming to this country and stealing this country, right? And on top of that, we as Black people built this country. It's such distorted logic. It's like when people start talking like that, I don't even want to engage with you because you are so lost and so entitled. It's not even worth it, right? So I'm going to shift a little bit, ladies. So if each of you can just briefly talk about, because I want Black women to be able to watch this and say, she did that. Maybe I can do that too. How did you evaluate the pros and cons? So I'm going to start with the women who've left the job, and then Dr. Monica, I'm going to come back to you, okay? So if you all can talk about how did you evaluate the pros and cons of leaving a toxic job? How did you do that? We'll start with you, DeShaunda.
Sorry about that. As I shared at the beginning, I think, two things were, how is this impacting me physically, right? So am I having a hard time sleeping? Is my heart, do I have arrhythmia? Like all of those things actually happen to me, right? Like my heart rate starts changing. And how is this impacting my emotional or my psychological health? And for me, that was when I started, you mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, Dr. Connie, when I started showing up at work and the version of myself that was showing up was the worst of who I was and not the best of who I was, now we got a problem, right? Like, 'cause now I'm not walking with God and spirit the way I'm being asked to, because y'all got me all confused, right?
You got me all messed up.
Yeah, so that was a big one for me, right? When I started showing up ugly acting at work and not really being myself, when I'm starting to reinscribe the behavior of my coworkers instead of being a model for what you should be doing at work, I'm compromised. Like I'm too out of balance to be here.
Yeah.
As I got further along in my career, then the next criteria that I used was around opportunities for career growth and development, right? And the glass ceiling is real. The glass cliff is realer. And I have hit both of those, right? And so that knowing in a big corporation, in a multinational corporation, every year it kept getting flatter and flatter and flatter and flatter. There wasn't anything to promote into. So I can get all kind of degrees. I can have all kind of years of service. Corporate America doesn't work like education, right? Like there is no tenure in corporate America. And so it became very clear that organizations, right, during my lifetime as a Gen X person, were shifting in such a way that there were a bunch of people. It was classic capitalism pyramid, right? Like in classic plantation, bunch of people in the bottom with nowhere to go, right? And a handful of people at the top hoarding power. And this whole system that's been designed is getting ready to get disrupted again by AI. So all those people that are scared and sitting around being quiet, and I'm not going to say, you're not going to have a job anyway, come 10 years. So you better get to speaking up and finding your place in this world, because it's probably not going to be in an organization.
Yes.
And then
wait, can I say something?
Please.
There's no safety in your silence. Your silence is not going to save you. Yes.
I love that. There is no safety in your silence. And then the third thing, as I was weighing the pros and cons, is relational, right? And I think we've heard that theme come up a couple of times in the conversation, which is, if you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. And so I started looking and determining inside of this organization, do I have allies and do I have real co-conspirators, right? Like, or am I in here by myself? And when I looked around and I was like, oh, my allies are engaging in CYA behavior. Okay, like I don't have no network in here. I have no career opportunities and I feel horrible. Then I'm done, right? Like check. It's time to go.
Exactly.
So those were like my 3 big buckets in terms of how I was making those.
Yes, I love how you laid it out, right? So the costs were up there, right? And when I want you to, I want people to hear too, all the costs that DeShaunda talked about, because sometimes we stay here with the benefit, what's giving me money, right? And the golden handcuffs. But did you hear the cost, right? So I want Black women to be able to hear what you shared, hear what all of us are sharing, and look to see, okay, what does it look like in your life too? Because if the cost benefit analysis is like this, it's not, it doesn't benefit you to stay there, right? Thank you, DeShaunda. What about for you, Sonia? What was your cost benefit analysis or the pros and cons? How did you evaluate that in relation to leaving your toxic job?
I would say that I still struggle with what that cost analysis is even to this day. I mean, like I look back and I say, yeah, there were certain things that were smacking me in my face. Like, my health was deteriorating. Like I'm questioning my own sanity. Like, am I crazy? Did I just hear that person say this? I question those things. But when it came to, I don't know, I've always considered myself a weird alien type person that if you challenge my integrity and my character, you're going to have a fight on your hand. And don't call me a lie. Like those is like,
ooh, girl.
We gonna fight. You make me really put my gloves on, and we gonna fight until I don't have the energy to fight anymore. And so I don't necessarily say for me that I had like, okay, if I do this, then this is gonna happen, and if I do, I didn't go into this with the intelligent thought process whatsoever. I went into this, I'm fighting for my life.
Yes.
And fighting for my life looked like, the question that I continued to ask myself was, have you ever been quiet about this? So, since I knew the answer was no, then why are you allowing them to push you to be quiet now? And I say that not only is, what did you say? Silence is what?
Silence is not safe. It doesn't keep you safe.
It's not safe, right?
Yeah.
I say silence is violence on so many levels. Like the people that are watching, you're watching them kill me, and you're doing it silently. Wow. If I don't say nothing, I'm watching I'm participating in my own death by suicide. Silence is violence, and when people don't recognize the power of their voice, so I wrote a book going into when did we learn that our voices wasn't important? When was it as a child that we said, I'm accepting adults who say, shh, don't say that. Shh, you don't know nothing. Shh. So we learned that, and we picked that up from children that were to a certain. My mama and my daddy will tell you she would not be quiet. And so I didn't weigh the cost of do this or do that. It was literally a fight for my life. And are you challenging my character? Are you challenging my integrity? Are you calling me a lie? Then you want to fight me. And I was at school board meetings like, so you gonna fire me? And I'm looking at school board, members, tell this principal, and I'm naming names and I'm dropping dollar amounts because I believe the data speaks for itself. Call me a lie, prove me wrong. And while you trying to prove me wrong, get a good attorney, because I'm gonna get a good attorney too. So I don't know. I maybe I'm a weirdo. I wish that there were more weirdos in the world, but at the same time, I appreciate people and I respect everyone's journey of how they got to that place.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. The part that, oh my God, so many parts of that, but I want Black women to particularly hear the part about when we're in a workplace, a toxic workplace, and other people are witnessing what is happening to us, and they're not trying to support us in any way, they are complicit in the oppression. The other part is that I heard you say, Sonia, is when we are silent about our oppression. I think we talked about this in the previous one with Zora Neale Hurston, right? So if you're silent about your oppression, they'll eat you up and say you liked it, right? So then we become complicit in our own oppression. And then it becomes to a point where now your integrity is at stake, right? So now people are relying on you And you have to say, am I going to be okay with people lying on me? Now, let me say this one thing before I go to Stephanie and then Dr. Monica. People lying on me has been a huge pet peeve for me. And particularly that toxic job, I had to stop myself because people will be lying on me. I'm like, that's not true. And I'm going through all of this, trying to get the receipts, that's a lie. Da-da-da. I'm like, wait a minute. But why are you trying to prove something to people who are morally bankrupt? They're not going to tell the truth. They're not going to tell the truth. Like Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth, right? They can't handle the truth. So why am I spending the time to try to prove something to people that I don't respect? And so Black women, we have to be mindful of that, because I think a lot of us cannot stand when somebody lies on us. And then we start getting into this thing of trying to defend ourselves. Think to yourself, is it worth it? Many times it's not. It's not. Okay. Stephanie, what about for you? The pros and cons. How did you evaluate the pros and cons of leaving that toxic job?
Well, okay, so I didn't really have a choice of evaluating pros and cons, because I was one of those, okay, I know I should leave. I know you told me in 2013 to leave. I know you told me in this year that I needed to leave, meaning doctors, etc. The reason that I wound up leaving my toxic job was because I got long COVID, and I could not, I had to finally acknowledge that I could no longer do the job itself.
Yeah.
And to show you just how indoctrinated I was still trying to figure out, could I just go back? Not because I loved it, but because it's like, well, I mean, I'm getting closer and closer to my retirement age. I don't want to have to work until I'm 80. I don't want, what's going to happen to me? I am a single woman. So I have to take care of myself. Who's going to do X, Y, and Z? And I even was still trying to figure out how to stay when one of the doctors who was evaluating me when I had, for long COVID, and who was part of the treatment team, because I'm still in the program, the post-COVID program, said to me, when I told her I just wanted to work another 6 or 7 years, and she said, if you stay there, you won't live another 6 or 7 years.
That part.
And I think that we have to, I can't say this enough. I heard another Black woman talk about, I was on the panel, we were discussing something similar to this. And she talked about how she was in a position to ensure that she had her own stuff so that she could exit stage left and still take care of herself. And so I think that one of the things that I would strongly encourage Black women to do is to build your own table and chairs. Just
and that's Shirley Chisholm, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, build your own tables and chairs, and build your own store.
Yes.
So that, because at the end of the day, it's not worth it. My son, my 30-year-old son, who has the same name as Dr. Monica's son, my 30-year-old Solomon, said to me, isn't the quality of your life better now than it was then? And I said, well, yeah, of course it is. But I'm like, I still am, out here wondering, what my next X number of years will look like. So that's a definite consideration. But I don't think, even though I'm out here kind of, and I don't like, I take calculated risks. I'm not a high flying type of person. Right now, I'm like, okay, I just still don't know how this is going to turn out. But I still feel like I got the better end of the stick.
Absolutely. Your doctor's not saying to you anymore that you may not make it to another 6 or 7 years, right?
No, I'm not saying that anymore. No.
Yes. So that's like I don't want to do. I was going to say a trump card, but I don't want to say that. But basically what I'm saying is that takes over everything, right? In terms of your life is no longer at stake because of a stressful job, right? That's a huge benefit. Okay, Dr. Monica, for you, what has been the cost benefits analysis for you in relation to staying at a toxic job?
It just sounds so weird to say that. Like, it doesn't even sound, the sentence doesn't even sound right. Like, what's the benefit of you staying in a toxic job? I would say I need to go back to it because I used to think that I was called to the ministry. I used to always think that, like, oh, am I a pulpit minister? Is there something that's going on? But I really realized that the ministry that I have been called to is what I am doing and how I am speaking out in this space. It has. I was on a podcast interview one time, and someone, I mean, maybe I told you this before, I'm gonna say it again. Okay. Someone asked me, is it easy to do this? And I said, it is not. But when I get that tapping on my spirit that I'm supposed to call organizations out from within, I remembered having that moment with God. I'm going to be very spiritual here. And I said, God, I'll do it, but I don't want to do it by myself. And it's that moment where I know I am this person, but I do not enjoy doing this alone. I do not enjoy being in an organization and knowing what I know and calling it out and knowing that I am sacrificing my flesh for this and my reputation for this. It is hard, but I know that someone who is on the inside has to do this. If I have been given the great opportunity, and I do feel teary, if I have been given the great opportunity to be one of point whatever, I will not sit in that room and allow my sisters to be slaughtered. That is, I'm sorry, I've been given access, immense privilege for a reason.
Yes.
And I believe that I will be protected because in this moment, no one else in history has ever spoken up to penetrate that space. And if I am given access to that moment so that others do not have to do it, I will do it. I am in this space for a reason. And how do I say this? I mean, it's a moment. And I'm just telling you, I see it. I dream it. I know the words that come to me. And it is on me to do that. It is on me to speak when the leaders above me who are in positions of power will not have the courage to do it. I will go in that space and say, this is the right thing to do by the people who trust you every day. And if you do not do this, that is a curse on your organization. And that's the part that gets rough, because then it's like, oh Lord, please don't let me have to tell these people like their organization is about to crumble because they're about to do all this stuff to these people. But it is just like ministry. I am telling you, when we are given this mantle, we must be obedient and good stewards to that space that we are in. And some of us are called to this. You know what? I'm gonna tell you something. There are a lot of people who are called just like me. They are not obedient. That part. They are in those positions of power right now with the access to the budgets and the resources and the personnel, and they can flip this organization overnight, but they don't do it. All you see is me being in an organization, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to be obedient to dismantle and to call out and to do everything that I have been placed to do in this moment. That's all. And I'm gonna tell you what's up. God has not called me out of this organization yet, but because I do hear clearly from him, I will know when it is time. There are not enough people who are doing what I am doing, and that is why I am in here trying to make sure that the harvest is greater so they can come in and go across industries to do what I am doing so boldly. Get your behind in there and do it. Speak up. Just do what you do right now. So that's it. I'm going off, but I'm telling you, it's a moment.
Okay. let me add something. Can I just need to add one thing.
Yes.
Okay, so I identify so much with what you're saying, Dr. Monica, because one of the things that I have not said in the time that we have been on here is that 10 years ago, I started writing and speaking about what it was and what it meant to live with a mental illness, what it meant to be suicidal as a person who is Black, as a Black woman, as a person of faith, as a lawyer. And I started doing that as a person who normally is on the sidelines, because I had survived so much and come through so much and learned so much that I felt that it would be robbery and, in a large sense, disobedient to not tell my story to help other people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years of being in my toxic job, I did not ever really write about toxic workspaces,
Mm-hmm.
because I never ever wanted them to try to say that I was talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have talked about them. I would have legitimately been talking about other people. But the thing that leaving my job has opened up for me is the opportunity to do the work that I have been purposed to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing that that resonates so strongly with me, that what you're saying has resonated so strongly with me, I put it out there. If I am suicidal, I put it out there. I write the good, the bad, the ugly, and it comes at a risk, but I don't do it. I do it intentionally. And I don't do it. Yes, it could risk my reputation. Yes, people could look at me sideways and go, well, we don't know whether we can have her do this, because what if she jumps off of the building and that kind of thing. There is a cost. But the thing is that there are times, and in those moments, that God will speak to you, will send stuff. I can remember times in the course of writing about the things that I have written about where I was sitting in church, and it just so happened that my pastor was out of town that particular month because it was summer vacation for him. And every single Sunday, someone was preaching about what I was writing about. It got to the point where I started kind of looking around like, I just am coming in here. My computer is at home. I don't tell people what I'm writing about. But when you do that work, you have to, and I know this, when I have literally opened myself up and just poured it all out and left it on the page and walked away and published it, or I go and I talk about it because I believe that my goal and my role is to disrupt workplaces and also disrupt systems that refuse to acknowledge and discuss and deal with mental health and well-being. Mm-hmm. But when you open all of that up and you release and pour that out, I know from doing that work that you gotta step back and rejuvenate, recharge. And the other thing is, in doing the work that you're doing in particular, Dr. Monica, and you probably know this already, everybody cannot have access to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Your circle has to almost be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because and this is where being at Spelman comes into play. Mm-hmm. Because we can form a circle around each other that is tighter than tight. When I have had a major mental health crisis, and I wrote about it and I put it up on Facebook, and I was telling everybody in the post that I wrote, I am fine. Don't come, don't send anybody, don't call my parents, don't do this, don't do that. Of course they did all of that.
Right.
But they formed a really tight circle around me to protect me. Mm-hmm. And the thing, and ultimately, the thing that they did not understand is that I tried to tell them, I do not put this up here because of me. I put this up there because one of our other Spelman sisters is messaging me offline and saying, you are speaking to what I am going through right now at 1:00 in the morning, right
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing it for that. But what I'm saying is, you are going to have to really, really ratchet your circle down. And you can't let just everybody have access to you, regardless of how much money they have, regardless of what color they are. And yes, I'm going to say this, unfortunately, even if they went to Spelman.
Ooh, I think
Even
that's
if,
a chord. Yes.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just remember that.
Yes. 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 And I want to
Can I,
say, oh, yes. Go on, Sonia. Go on. Go on. Go
I
on.
just wanted to add, I mean, the power that is in this room, right? And imagining the power in circles, because we all create our circles, and hopefully are making sure that they are tight and strong, and reevaluating the seasons of those circles, right? What comes to mind, I was doing a training not too long ago, and I had to mention the two Black women university presidents that died, right? And there was all this, you know, interpersonal introspection, reflection of like, that could have been me, or I know someone who did, right? And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention the names of Joanne Epps of Temple University and Dr. Orinthia Montague of Volunteer State Community College, because one of the things in an article that I used in one of my last trainings on who are we really protecting when we protect these systems, is an article that comes out of Choices, and they do all kind of research at the collegiate level. But in this article in particular, it says one senior level BIPOC administrator recently confided in me that she is battle weary from fighting against stereotype threat, hostility from other people of color within her organization. And quote, Alexia, I can't win. I'm often treated poorly by some of the white faculty and leaders I work with, and the people of color on campus treat me as if as if my ascension into leadership is somehow a betrayal of DI, or they expect me to be some kind of miracle worker that can immediately wave a wand to fix over centuries worth of oppression in subsystems, not just the system, but subsystems, right? And structural practices. Meanwhile, I'm advocating for everyone to be able to thrive in a just environment. And I'm tired, and I don't want to die from stress and the constant heartbreak of this job. And I when I read that in that last session that I did, there were 3 women who are messaging me, DMing me, you know, essentially, this is me, and I don't want to die. And
Yeah.
so what are we saying on a daily basis is the challenge when we wake up every day, when we have the opportunity. You know, this platform is here for a reason. And I don't believe that there isn't a destiny in the how and who and why of where we show up when we show up. Because somebody here is being filled, because sometimes our cup might get a little empty, or our cup is running over and somebody else can be poured into. And
Yes.
so that's the realization when I think about how we as Black women are so powerful in the stance of what we bring to the table, and not just what we bring to the table, because that's almost an offensive phrase to me these days, what we bring to the building.
Yeah, because we transform, right? And you know, I really wanted to thank you all for including the spiritual component, because the spiritual component really is our protective factor that keeps us and sustains us, and being open to hearing what our higher power is saying. So for me, even me starting this YouTube channel, this was God was telling me to do this. When I resigned from my toxic job, I heard the word of God say to me, as clear as day, I'm in the shower, I hear the word of God say to me, if you go back to that job, it's a death sentence, right? Every day of my life, since I have resigned from a toxic job, I start my day with, God, please lead me in the direction you want me to go. I surrender to you. So I hope that Black women are watching this right now, and we are connected to our higher power. We're listening. And as Dr. Monica said, we're obedient. We're obedient. And we listen to and pay attention to those signs that we are being harmed. And we do an exit or pivot. We do whatever we have to do because our sanity, our health is a priority over anything else. Okay. So, ladies, I know we're a little over, but this is such a rich conversation. As we're winding down, if there's a Black woman watching this conversation right now, and she's trying to go through the risk and benefits and the cost, and she can't really quite figure it out, right? But she's saying to herself, I really just cannot move forward because I'm not going to let them run me out of this good job, these good benefits. What would you say to her? Okay, so I'll start with you, DeShaunda. What would you say to her?
That is tough. I mean, that is tough. And I think this entire conversation has spoken to that tension. And I like, you know, some other voices on this call, I am a deeply, deeply, deeply spiritual person. And I would just say, make sure when you are making those pronouncements on behalf of yourself, because whatever you speak into existence becomes your existence, right? Like that is how energy works, right? That is coming from the part of you that loves you and thinks your right to comfort outweighs everybody else. If it's any other part of you, any other aspect of your personality, something coming in out of your shadow, coming in and telling you that, go back in and get into prayer and into discernment, right? If it is your egoic self telling you that, you have the wrong person in charge of your life, and you will continue to suffer. And that is, and I say that from lived experience, because I have said those things to myself and have gone from bad job to bad job, right? Because you can go from one toxic environment into another. And and the reason why that happens is because we don't stop to engage in radical self-affirmation. Check in with yourself, your real self, your gut brain and your heart mind, right? Not just your logical mind.
You said your gut brain.
Your bones.
I love it.
Gut brain, heart mind. Get down in there and ask that question again, and then listen for the answer, not up here, but in here. Because your body knows the answer to that question. Your body and so that God talks to us through our bodies. Through our emotions. That is where the answer to that question lies. And sometimes it may be like with Dr. Monica, right? Many are called, few are chosen, because few choose to answer and say yes, right? Like sometimes when you go in there, but your mind may be going, I want to go. Like I'm tired, and I've been there too. Like I'm tired of this. I don't have to. I'm not going to do that. But that's not what God was asking. God was asking for me to stay, and I left, and now I got to go repeat that lesson. So that I would say, sisters, like check in with your body to know, are you there for a reason? And God is calling you to be there to do some work, like Dr. Monica, for a season or for a lifetime, depends on who you are. Or is your body, your spirit, your gut brain, your heart mind telling you to honor yourself and to love yourself above whatever those benefits are that you think you're hanging on to?
Yeah. Point taken. Yes. Sonia.
Oh, again, I agree that that's a challenging question, but I would also say reevaluate your purpose. Reevaluate what that plan is. Tap into what those things are that drive you passionately. I think that all of us, the sense that I've gotten and gained from this conversation is that a part of us knew who we were, and we recognized that we were more than enough when we entered into those spaces and places anyway. And so and again, I think, I've heard it, more than once, that I think that's something about a Spelman woman, right? The confidence of knowing that you are more than enough. And I don't say that cavalierly or loosely,
Mhm.
like we don't have, issues of self-doubt.
Mhm.
But there is an air that is embedded in a Spelman woman. And I say
Mhm.
go bodaciously. They are already going to think things about you,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, yeah, I'm that ghetto chick from Oakland. And I'm proud of her because she has done X, Y, and Z. While the
Mhm.
naysayers say that I couldn't, I've proved them wrong, right? And
Mhm.
there are so many of those. I look at my mama and I say, she was a hood chick from Chicago, grew up in the projects of Cabrini Green. She wasn't supposed to make it. But
Mm.
when she decided to leave Chicago at age 18 and look for a better situation in California, that was a pathway for her children to be better than Cabrini Green.
Mm.
Let them believe what they want to believe, because at the end of the day, your purpose supersedes it.
Yes. 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 Okay. I know your mom's from Chicago too. Okay, Dr. Monica. Oh, you said hold
Yeah,
on. Okay.
no, you're fine. Okay,
Okay.
no, this is good. You know what? I just think you should not be broken. And I think for many people, there are these limits, there are these moments that break them, and it can break you beyond repair. You may not be able to come back from it.
That's
And you
true.
don't know what that is. Like, we all have different thresholds for things. We all have different callings. We have all different, ways that we have to move. But I think so
Mhm.
often we need to be very conscious of what grieves us,
Yes.
what moves us in ways that will impact our generations, and how we need to kind of, I don't know, align with our spirits. And so I
Yeah.
just, it is the inner work, just like DeShaunda said. I mean, it is hard for me to explain this because I think you just have to know. Like, the more you know about yourself,
Mhm.
and I think Sonia said this as well, the more
Mhm.
you will know. You
Mhm.
will know when your calling has shifted. Like, I'm an
Mhm.
engineering education researcher, but I do more stuff on workplace trauma and other things. And that was never anything I planned to do. But because of my situation, I said, I am now propelled to
Yeah.
share this information. That was
Yeah.
a calling, and that was an awareness, and that was a shift inside the system. And
Yeah.
so that's what I say. Like, go back to your core.
Yeah.
Go
And
back
what do
to
you
who you
feel?
are.
What do you feel in your spirit, right? And
Absolutely.
and
That's
the part
it.
you said about knowing your breaking points. I think a lot of Black women are disconnected from what our breaking point is because we have we bend over and we do so many things for so many people. But in your spirit when you're at that breaking point, pay attention to that. It's very important. Yes.
And really quickly, it's almost like a locator. I tell people this all the time. When you think about a relationship, like a romantic relationship, I love the metaphors of romantic relationships. There are certain things you won't tolerate. And
Mm.
so look at your core there. Will you allow someone to call you out of your name? Will you allow someone to violate you by, touching you and doing certain things? Like, what are your boundaries? And I
Mhm.
advise people, think about your boundaries in your personal self. And now let that workplace be seen as a spouse, a partner, a lover.
Mhm.
What are they doing to you? How are
Mhm.
they engaging with you? Is it
Mhm.
reciprocal?
Mm.
Are you giving more than you're taking?
Right.
And how does that impact you and your ability to move forward too? So it's always about that metaphor too. Look at your whole life and how you
Absolutely.
respond. And that comes back to authenticity. Who
Uh,
you are at work should be
yeah.
who you are in your relationship. And what
Right.
you tolerate at work shouldn't be different than what you're going to tolerate with your man, your woman, or whomever.
Yes.
You are that
Yes.
person who deserves to be valued 24 hours a day.
So
That's what
true.
I say.
And before I go to you, Stephanie, I just want to say I did a video about why is it okay to tell people to leave an abusive relationship, but we tell them to stay in an abusive job, right? And so we have to be mindful. So just like what you just talked about, not only being truthful to ourselves and listen to ourselves, but we have to be mindful of, Stephanie just talked about this, who's in our circle, who's around us, because there might be people around us who are telling us, girl, you better not leave that good job with the good benefits. You better not do that, right? You're going to end up homeless. You better not do that. So in addition to what you're saying and what we're all saying, listen to yourself, but be very mindful of what other people are telling you. If you are in a situation where you are being harmed and someone is telling you to stay in an environment that you're being harmed, check that, right? Maybe don't share that information with them. So I'm going to quote Glenn Mazzini and I'm going to go to Stephanie. Glenn Mazzini said, check the tree before you pick the fruit. So if somebody is telling you to stay at a toxic job and they're miserable, they're unhappy with their lives, don't listen to them. You talk to other people and you get another circle of people who can pour into you, right? So Stephanie, what were we going to say?
I mean, so much of what I would have said has been said. I think it's important and essential to set your own boundaries and know what those boundaries are and be very clear about telling people that they cannot cross the boundary. And I did that within my own workspace to tell people, look, you're not going to bring whatever, all this mess, that the personal garbage that you're dragging and put it in here with me. That's just not going to happen. But the other thing is that it's imperative to pay attention to your body.
Yeah.
If you have people who are taking care of you, whether it be a therapist or whether it is a doctor, and they are telling you that you need to leave, I can't say this enough, begin to prepare your exit plan. Because the other reason that you need an exit plan is because nothing is forever. And we don't own any of this stuff, don't necessarily want to own the plantation, but the plantation can also kick you off whenever they want to.
Yes, they
So
can.
you got to be prepared to move on and take care of yourself, but also listen to your body, set boundaries and for yourself. Respect yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing, because when I was at my toxic job, I tried to leave over and over again. And it became apparent that God had not given me release. And so when the time came for me to be released, I just thought, really? I'm getting released now. You're giving me release now because I have long COVID, or were you trying to tell me all these other times to leave and you just ignored me? So every single time, because that will happen.
Yes.
Especially to those of us who are oftentimes disobedient.
Yes. Yes. So true. I don't know who said this, but they talked about, God will first tell you with a whisper, right? And then you don't pay attention, then the brick comes. Okay. So that's what happens. You're right. We're not obedient. So as we're winding down, for real, I want each of you to talk about services you offer, how you can be contacted. Then we're going to read the community chat. And then for real, we're going to end. So DeShaunda, can you share with the audience about services you offer and how you can be contacted?
Yeah, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate the offer. So totally easy. You can find me on LinkedIn, DeShaunda Gooden Warner, very easy place to find me. And in terms of like what I offer, I have named myself, right? Because I believe in the power of self-definition. I am a villain era doula, right? And so I was really, really inspired probably about 2 years ago around this kind of cultural phenomenon being called a villain era. And essentially that's just radical self-affirmation, right? It is stepping in, prioritizing self-care, prioritizing setting boundaries, and that is the space that I live in. I have a weekly newsletter that's a little bit like a love letter to Black women that are much like us, right? In professional environments, maybe in a season of career stagnation, maybe not so much stagnated, but not feeling all the way fulfilled. And that newsletter is designed to just wrap around and kind of give you some little insights and musings and inspiration. I consider my superpower breathing life into other people's dreams, and it is my joy to companion people as they do that inner work and that deep kind of mindset shift to start to pursue opportunities that really line up and match up with both how they value themselves, which may or may not be how they're being valued in a workplace where they are, and their real aspirations that they have for their life that have been placed on their heart. So you can find that and sign up for that if you are interested. And that sounds like something that is your jam at feelingvillainous.com.
Ooh, okay. So I will put DeShaunda's information, everybody's information, that name. Okay. I'll put all the information description section. Dr. Monica, if you can please share about services you offer and how you can be contacted and your products, please.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for this opportunity tonight. I am at drmonicacox.com. That's drmonicacox.com. And on all social media platforms at Dr. Monica Cox. You can also find me at Author Monica Cox because I write novels and nonfiction as it relates back to some of this workplace stuff. So I am translating this in whatever form people need, whether it is fiction, nonfiction, also in coaching and in consulting. So I offer sessions for people to gain clarity about where they want to go next. I do have expertise, of course, in academia, but for people who say, I just don't know even what my skill sets are, what does this look like? I do believe that I am anointed to provide like one-on-one sessions with people to hear very clearly what that looks like and how I can lead people into that space. I'm also going to be offering some coaching and some more things to just really flow in the freedom that I have gotten to help other people to go into their workspaces. And if they choose to stay in those spaces, this is how you need to move so you emerge whole, bold, and strong, and have no regrets once you leave. So that's me, info at drmonicacox.com. And Dr. Kamani, one of the things I say is from work-life balance, I also must exit a little early because of some personal obligations, but I appreciate this time and I'll be in touch. So contact me on LinkedIn too, Monica Cox, Dr. Monica Cox.
Thank you, Dr. Monica. Thank you very
all.
much.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Much love.
Sonia.
Thank you again, Dr. Kimani. It's always a joy and a pleasure. I am Sonia Williams-Lewis. I am the founder and CEO of Ascribe Educational Consulting. Unlike the typical DEI, we are on a mission to curate safe spaces for courageous conversations about race plus equity. So they are not, these singular things. We have to talk about race and equity together. And what that looks like for me is creating a world where the next generation doesn't have to heal from racialized trauma in the workplace, and however that shows up. We offer services where we're going in and leading trainings for whole organizations, as well as doing the micro work with leaders so that they know how to approach these issues from a leadership perspective. We do a lot of speaking engagements at conferences and so forth. And then I'm an author. I started year before last with the first book, Monsters and Aliens, The Voices You Wish They Heard. And basically, it's going to be a series of 7 books at the moment. It could be more. But the first one started with that little girl, that 7-year-old girl that my mother always says, that was the first activist that I know you to be. And it was my refusal in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and sort of the story behind how I pushed back to an elder teacher on my school campus who thought that her tenure would save her career. And little 7-year-old Sonia Williams at the time encouraged her to retire early. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yes.
And so we just have to be very diligent on who we are, identifying who we are, and standing on business on what that is. And
Mhm.
Ascribe Educational Consulting, you can find us on all of the socials at Ascribe Success. That is our website as well. Ascribe, ASCRIBE, success.com.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Okay. Well, I'll start first with Resilience 2.0. So, I have a LinkedIn Live that I do with my partner in crime who lives in the UK called Resilience 2.0. And it comes out of a TEDx Columbus talk that I gave about starting over from nothing as a solo mom and what I learned in life's hard places, and has gone on to talk about resilience and how people can build resilience in different types of situations, including, because Dr. Kamani's been a guest on Resilience 2.0, including when you have been a Black woman in a toxic work in space. But the other thing that I do is I write. I haven't written as much as I'd like to lately because I've been doing a few other things, but I write about what it means to live with a mental illness. I write and speak about disrupting stigma associated with mental illness within corporate context, within the Black community, and within faith communities, and why we must pursue and embrace wellness. And take care of ourselves and acknowledge the beast that's in the room because it's there, and we have to stop pretending that this is not real, that mental illness and mental health is not real. The other thing that I do is I am also a workplace disruptor because I will go into workplaces and spaces and talk to them about how they can create workspaces that actually work, that they pull out dysfunction that exists by the root, and also trauma and the other kinds of things that are happening within workspaces, and why from a legal/risk perspective, it is incumbent and in their best interest to improve the quality of their spaces. Because one of the things that I concluded after spending over a decade, well, most of my career has been in labor and employment law. But one of the things that I concluded after spending a decade of advising employers is that you have to be proactive rather than reactive. And that if you would just stop and deal with things before they become too big, it's not as necessarily as complicated as you might think that it is, rather than if you wait until everything blows up.
Right.
And your employees know when you are dysfunctional. They know it.
True.
And they know when you don't care about them. And they know that you don't trust them. And so if your employees don't trust you, they're not going to care about you. They're not going to be loyal to you. If you don't trust them, they are not going to trust you. If you are not loyal to them, then they are not going to be loyal to you. And it seems really simple and straightforward, but it's also a hard thing for people to grasp.
Yeah.
And some of that, I think, lies in patriarchy. But
yeah, and they need to be open, right, to listen and understand that. Okay, so thank you. So I'm going to briefly read the community.
I'm sorry, Dr. Kamani. I forgot to tell people how to reach me.
Oh, okay.
You can reach me at all you have to do is just enter Stephanie Mitchell Hughes. And so you can reach me through my website, stephaniemitchellhughes.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, primarily Stephanie Mitchell Hughes. And sometimes you might find me on Instagram if I open my page up under Stephanie Mitchell Hughes.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to briefly read our community. So people are saying, good evening. Thank you for sharing all this information. You have no idea how much it has validated. Oh my God, wait. how much it's validated my feelings. Oh my gosh. Experiences at a hostile work environment. Thank God I survived that place. Currently healing. Good, good. I'm busy packing for a trip, but I had to pause to let you ladies know that you are speaking truth. Well, I'm glad you joined in. Yes, call them out. Raising awareness about these environments has been a blessing to many of us. Yes. Good evening, and thank you for all your leadership and educating us on these crappy work environments. Yes, not only educating us, but letting us know there's a way out and we have options. Okay. Keep at it, because you are helping and you're clearly built for it, Dr. Monica. Yes, yes. Hello, Dr. Kamani. Oh, this is one of our Spelman sisters, Natasha. Hey, Natasha. Good day. Okay, question. This is a question from the chat. If the cost is better with you staying at the job, at least for now, due to being close to retirement, for example, federal pension with worldwide medical benefits, how do you recommend ways to self-manage? Anybody want to answer that question?
Oh, okay.
I think you want to, Stephanie.
Okay, so that is a hard question, because that is exactly what I wrestled with. I wrestled with, because it's like, I've been here all this time. I've accumulated this. I've done that. I'm really close. I think that you have to follow your instincts. I think that you still need to make a plan. And the thing that you don't want to have happen is you have to really have an honest and searching assessment of yourself in terms of your mental health and your physical health. Because unfortunately, I am finding that tomorrow is not promised. And I don't say that lightly or to scare you. It isn't. And so the thing you don't want to do is, if you are physically and mentally just under attack, you don't want to essentially have them basically pull you out on a stretcher, and then you're not able to enjoy the retirement benefits that you worked so hard and sacrificed for. So it's a balancing, but it is a very, very hard call. They put me out because I simply got to a point, because of long COVID primarily, that I could not do my job anymore. You don't want it to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a hard decision. And I totally identify with that question.
Yeah. Well, first, I appreciate, Stephanie, you answering that, because you were in that position and validating the experience, but also really encouraging her to really look at her health, her physical and mental health. And I just want to add, it might be helpful, if you're not already in therapy, to talk about this with a therapist too,
Right.
to help you, go through that process.
Right.
Discernment will indeed let you know when it's time to exit. Yes, discernment leads the way. I just resigned from my position and have been feeling horrible. I logged in to look for a position and this popped up. Well, I'm so glad that it popped up. And I want to commend you for saving yourself, but also suggest that you really tap into not only therapy, but the circle of people around you who can support you during this difficult time. Because when you leave a job, even if it's toxic, many times there's a grief process that comes along with that. And if we bypass it and we're like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I feel better? Right? Because you're going through a grief process. So allow yourself to grieve the loss of the job, which might be helpful in therapy, but give yourself that space. Let's see. I'm a woman who has experienced workplace violence. Today, I made a decision to resign from my position. I've been feeling really down today and decided to see what was on LinkedIn. And this was my first feed. Wow, that's amazing. Well, I am so sorry that you've been experiencing that. My hope is that you are taking appropriate recourse regarding that. Stephanie, can you speak to that? Because about workplace violence and
Oh my gosh. You know, I had that experience very early in my career where I was nearly assaulted by my then immediate supervisor.
wow.
And
Wow.
no one took up my cause or disciplined him or did anything to address his behavior.
Mm.
And looking back, I just see myself as this very young lawyer who did not have enough confidence, belief, value in myself to really find ways of standing up for myself. And I did not have allies and other people who would also stand up for me, because when I talked about it and when I explained the way that I felt, people questioned me about that.
Wow.
And when I had to, and oddly enough, and I hadn't really made that connection, this happened in the year that Anita Hill shared her concerns and experience with Clarence Thomas. And so the very people who were questioning me and what I had to say about an experience questioned me, but they were just all on, well, look at what he did to her, and they're all on his bandwagon.
Wow.
But I digress.
Hypocrisy.
I would certainly, I would certainly get counseling. That is, I cannot recommend a decent counselor more highly. I would also get at least start there and get some guidance on what is the best way for you to proceed. Do you want to file some sort of action against the person, against the work environment? Did you talk to people there, find out, give them an opportunity to address it? I mean, those are some of the types of questions and things that are out there, but do not beat yourself up for doing what you felt you needed to do to protect yourself. Because unfortunately, we increasingly live in a time when people's response to things is to just automatically become violent.
Right.
And people have no boundaries. They don't seem to have boundaries or self-control anymore.
Right. Right. So Stephanie, would you think maybe consulting with an employment attorney, and how could she
Possibly,
find one?
yeah. I mean, once I got myself together, at least initially, talking to a therapist, making sure that mentally, physically, I had all of my things together, I was okay. And I would also gather any documents that I have. I would write out what has happened, what if you talk to your employer about it, what their response was, put together all of the information that you can, documents and anything else that you have relating to the incident and the employer's response. And if you look for an unemployment attorney, or possibly call EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or if your state has a state civil rights commission, reach out to them. They cannot give you legal advice or anything, but maybe you could get some guidance. They may suggest that you file a charge of discrimination or something. And then they could flesh it out from there. But yeah, maybe that is a possibility.
Yeah.
And if you have also allies and other individuals who may have, I don't know if they necessarily work for the organization, but other people who might be able to give you some perspective. If you have a mentor or something like that you can talk to about the situation.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Dr. Kamani. Ladies, this has been very informative. Listen to the spirit and allow it to lead you. You will know what to do. Don't allow nothing to break you. To thyself be true. So true. Yes. That's so awesome. I'm currently turning my workplace drama into a novel series as well, just like Dr. Monica, a parody almost, like what I should be and not my real life. LOL. Yes, yes, yes. Forgive myself for not saying anything and suffered in a toxic job because I needed the money to pay off my debts. Yes. So we need to practice the self-forgiveness. We are in situations, sometimes we make the best decisions at the time, given what we're going through. So let us practice forgiveness. And I just want to say to everyone, I know we went very long today, but this was a very rich conversation. I'm so full of gratitude to my Spelman sisters for participating in this conversation. And I'm so thankful to this community for supporting one another and uplifting one another, and that you can see from one another that we can make it out of these environments, that it's important for us to prioritize our own health, self-preservation, and that we have options. So again, I mentioned the Job Liberation Virtual Summit. Replay is available. And for Juneteenth, so starting now until Monday, there will be a 20% discount for you to get the Job Liberation Virtual Summit. And the information will be in the description section. Also, to get the discount, you will click the link and you put in liberation in the discount code, okay? Liberation in the discount code, okay? So please share this video with at least 2 other Black women. And I just want to say in closing, just in honor of Spelman and all that Spelman has done to pour into us, has taught us our worth, reminded us of our worth. And also, even though part of our Spelman hymn says, undaunted by the fight, yes, we are daunted sometimes by the fight, but we still stand up, we rise up, and we rise up higher, right? And according to Spelman, that we are making a choice to change the world. All of us here making a choice to change the world. Black women, as you're watching this and you're choosing something different for your life, you are making a choice to change the world by doing that, okay?
Right.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Turn the notification bell so you know when I go live again. And again, please share this video with at least 2 other Black women, okay? So I'll see you all later. Bye, everyone.